Liberate IT is an Oracle NetSuite solution provider that has been servicing Australian and New Zealand companies since 2011.
Well, good morning, everyone. Welcome to the latest of Liberate IT webinar series. I'll be your host today, Andrew Lineker, and I'm joined here by David Chambers.
Hey, how you going, Andrew?
Excellent, thanks, David. I will do a formal intro for you just a sec, mate. But in the meantime, I am the relationship manager of Liberate IT. I have been with the company about a year now, and I am responsible for all things customer experience, customer service, NetSuite licensing. So if you ever need any improvements or enhancements to your NetSuite solution, don't hesitate to reach out to me. There's lots going on at the moment. As you may know, I've mentioned this a few times now, but we're celebrating 10 years for Liberate IT this year, which is very exciting for us. Next Wednesday, we have our user event. Obviously, we had to call it and made that an online event, which we were very disappointed about. But look, we're really hoping you can join us for that online event. That's next Wednesday, 12:30 p.m. New Zealand time, 10:30 a.m. Australian time. Really looking forward to having that. We'll be joined by the NetSuite team. They'll be going through NetSuite roadmap, and also why they nominated and chose us to win the Partner of the Year award for excellence in customer service. So really looking forward to hearing from them. We'll have some insights from our support manager, Hemel. We'll be going through all the new release information from each of our consultants, and also covering some areas that you will have in NetSuite, but you may not be taking advantage of that. So we'll be going through those. So listen out for those. We'll also be doing some Q&A with our consultants. So good opportunity to ask them some questions as well. And at the end, Hemel will be taking us through the new release process. So best practice is to follow a few steps just to make sure everything goes okay. I know a lot of you don't do that. I know some of you do. So for the new customers of ours, we're going to take you through that. Obviously, we're right in the midst of the update right now. There's a handful of our customers have updated last month, another handful this month, and the bulk of customers will be updating mid-October. So that will be on your dashboard under the new release portlet. I'm sure you know how to do that. If you are new to NetSuite, we do a regular NetSuite 101 for new users. Would really encourage you to get along to those webinars. They're short and sweet, but really good opportunity for you to get a handle of all things NetSuite. We also record all of these webinars. I'm recording this one at the moment. So we post those roughly a week or two after we do them on our YouTube channel, but also on our resources page of the website. So there's a lot of information on there. If you are also a new user and you just want to specialize into, hey, tell me a bit more about reporting and analytics, we have a few webinars relating to those as well. So as I mentioned, we will be recording today's session. And really encourage you to ask a bunch of questions of David when he starts his thing, but ask you not to go into the chat. I won't be monitoring that for the questions, and I'll read out those questions for David so he can go through them. Good opportunity, as I always do, just to introduce Hemel. Hemel's been with us now for about 3.5 months. Our new support manager, looking after the support team. He loves answering questions. He came with no NetSuite experience. He's madly learning NetSuite, which is fantastic to learn. I think he's got better experience in NetSuite than I do now after being working with the product for about 6 years. So he's doing a fantastic job and leading that team really well. Brett Marquet is our optimization manager. I think I've realized in the last probably 4 weeks I've been pronouncing his surname wrong. So sorry, Brett, for that. But Brett is our optimization manager. So as a free service for each of our customers, we get Brett involved along with myself to spend some time with you going through your business end to end and just making sure that you're getting the most out of NetSuite, but also B, is there anything that we can help and guide you with? Brett's got over 20 years of experience in that field. So looking forward to seeing you and doing that process with you. Okay, so look, Phocas, I'm really excited to be presenting them today. They've got a data analytics solution for the whole of business with a real emphasis around ease of use and a ready-made connection to NetSuite. So really keen to get these guys in to show off their wares. They've got many strings to their bow. There's the analytics for the full BI experience, financial statements piece. But what I've asked them to zoom in on today is the budgeting and forecasting piece. So I thought that is a great complementary solution to what NetSuite does. So, and of course, if you haven't fully explored the capability set of NetSuite Advanced Financials, which does all the budgeting and amortization and allocations, come and talk to me and I'll help you out with that. But look, without any further ado, I'd like to introduce David. David's got around 20 years of experience in data visualization, really to help you have better information to make better decision-making in your business. So, David, I will hand over to you.
Well, thanks a lot, Andrew. So we'll jump straight into it. As Andrew mentioned, we'll spend a bit of time looking at our budgeting and forecasting, but we'll also spend a little bit of time around the financial statements piece there to really start to understand how it all flows through, because we want to kind of see Phocas as one individual kind of tool that sits across your NetSuite businesses there. So that's the type of stuff that we'll be looking at there today. So let me jump in. I'll share my screen and then we will get going. So we call it the future of financial reporting here. So what we'll do is I'll go in and we'll jump in and we'll talk about what we're going to run through today. Firstly, we're going to set the scene. We're going to understand what Phocas financial statements is. We're going to understand governance and security related to those financial statements. And then we're going to look at how we can solve those data challenges in finance. And that leads nicely into the budgeting and forecasting piece, because really we want to encompass everything in that finance space and even other parts of your business, maybe in a sales or a purchasing area as well, into one tool. And that's what we're really about here with Phocas. So initially, let's set the scene. So currently at the moment, you need to be agile in a business. You want to go in there, you want to identify issues in the organization quickly and easily. And really the key part of that is data. You need to have that data. More importantly, that data needs to be fast. You can get it when you actually need it. And I guess even more importantly is that you need to have one version of truth around that. Everyone looks at the same data at the same time. Someone's not looking at it from a slightly different angle, a slightly different data extract that they've built, those types of things. Typically at the moment in the finance space that we're talking about really today, that data is normally held fairly tightly by the finance team. But in reality, everyone in the organization actually needs access to that data. The sales team need up to the minute revenue. Maybe HR need up to the minute employee costs, things like that. Maybe your IT team need up to the minute costs around mobile phones or IT spend, those types of things. But then if you think about that from a branch manager's perspective, a branch manager needs all of that information just for their specific branch though. So what we're really trying to do here is understand that that's the idea of where we're coming from with Phocas. We want to provide that visibility for everyone rather than just having it locked in the finance team and then finance are constantly providing those reports out to you. So traditionally, this is how it actually looks. You've got your traditional financial reporting. You've got your ERP system, in your case, NetSuite, sitting at the top there. You've got your bookkeeper and your finance team. You've got your CFO sitting at the top. They're producing those reports. Those reports are balance sheets, profit and losses, all those types of things. They're then shared with the team. So that might be shared. In some cases, it might be shared in Excel. That Excel is just going to get put in a shared drive is going to get put on an email. The password to one of the tabs is going to accidentally be put in the email, so people could, if they really want to, they can see the salaries of different people that have been budgeted for instance. So what we do with Phocas is we remove that finance and that security issue. Also, the questions that come out of that, you provide those information down to the CEO. He comes back and says, hey, what's going on here? Why are my travel expenses so high? A branch manager comes in and says, hey, why is that revenue not attributed to my branch, for instance? So it's really up and down, all gatekept essentially at this CFO and finance level. The end users don't really have access directly to the ERP system. And that's important that they don't have direct access, but you still want the users to have access to the data in there quickly and easily without having to go through a person, essentially. So why can't those stakeholders get access to the data that they need? And that's really where this modern approach comes in. So what you'll actually see here is that in the middle, we still have your ERP system. And that ERP system could be multiple ERP systems. Maybe you've got multiple companies running within an ERP system. Maybe you've grown by acquisition. At the moment, you're using NetSuite for one business, but then you've got another different ERP system for another business that you've built, that you've purchased over the last little bit there. So that all still sits in the middle. You've still got your financial control and your bookkeeper sitting around that, but they sit inside this Phocas financials area. And they're the ones that produce the reports within that tool. And then what happens is all your different stakeholders then access the financial statements tool because that has all the information in it that you actually need. So Phocas takes care of the presentation and the analytics for the end users. And those questions are answered easily from that tool rather than having to go through an actual person to get the answer to that question. So how does that actually look in a Phocas space here? There's three real parts to it. We've got our analytics area, we've got our customization, and then we've got our visualization there. So analysis is really where you're asking the question, how am I going against my budget? Why is this branch up? Why is this branch down? Effectively, that's what the end users typically are looking at a lot of the time there. In the middle, around that customized piece, this is where you've got your financial controllers, your accountants, CFOs, etc. They're building those different financial statements. They're building different ratios, different margin calculations, etc., all in the actual one tool. So it's much easier for you to share that information out there. And then the final piece that we've got here, and this is from my perspective, I'm not a trained accountant or anything like that, but my favorite piece is really this visualizations over on the right-hand side there. I like to call it finance for non-financial people. You've got a branch manager, kind of knows how to read a profit and loss, doesn't care about all the detail in there. What he cares about is how the sales going, how are his aged debtors, and what's his gross margin. We can put those 3 or 4 different things on a dashboard, visualize so he or she can see exactly what that is at that specific point in time there, without having to go deep into a profit loss or a balance sheet or a cash flow statement, essentially there. Now, the next thing we need to talk about here is security. If you sit there and raise your hand, I'm going to guess that a lot of people have said, hey, I've accidentally shared an Excel spreadsheet that's got data in there that an end user shouldn't have been able to see. I accidentally shared the salaries to someone that shouldn't have needed to see those salaries there. So the beauty of Phocas is that each user has a user profile assigned to them. That user profile defines what they can and what they can't see, what they can see in detail, but also what they can see in summary. So for instance, you might say, hey, look, they can see the summary information that we spent $1 million on wages, but you can't see the detail of the transactions that went into building that $1 million worth of salaries there. So that's controlled very granular, right down at a user level for their specific branch, for their specific need in the organization there. So that's our financials piece. So we've got our financial statement, but what we really want to think about is, well, how are we actually going to, what budget are we going to build And how do we build that budget for next year? I need to make $10 million next year. I want a margin of this amount. I'm going to spend this much on IT infrastructure, all those types of things. How do we actually manage that? And at the moment, it probably looks something like this. We start at the top, management, finance then build this gigantic big spreadsheet. They download a whole bunch of CSV files. They cut and paste it all together. They roll it up. They build these super complex formulas. They build a model based on that. They email all those files out to the line of business heads, department heads, branch managers, all that type of stuff. And then that goes through an iterative process. It starts from like a top-down type budget, but then ends up being kind of a quasi bottom-up budget where people then are constantly running through that revision of it. There's 50 different spreadsheets at the end of the day. No one's quite sure how they work other than one person in the actual organization that built it there. And then finally, after 42 versions, you get your budgets there. So the issues with that is that they're static. Once that kind of budget format's agreed on, it's quite difficult to change and tweak there. It's also, in most cases, totally separate from your ERP system there. So you've pulled all the data out and you put it in a spreadsheet. So there's no kind of dynamic updates that can happen with that. Change something in your ERP, that doesn't update into the actual spreadsheet there, for instance. Therefore, it's standalone and it's disconnected. It's totally separate from your ERP system. It's linear, meaning it really just starts at the top and goes to the bottom and says, okay, this is the process. We have to repeat that process multiple times throughout the budgeting process there. It can be very assumption-based, and those assumption-based might be based on prior year information, meaning that you might have your business set up one way in the last year, but you want to change that. You've made some strategic decisions to move that into a new view. It's quite hard to relate that to a brand new budget. Within Phocas, we can look at those changes and build that budget based on those changes there. And that's where that retrospective piece really comes in. It's looking at it at a retrospective rate. It might be just a simple run rate calculation that you're extrapolating out for sales on average at $10,000 per day. Therefore, I'm going to do 70,000 per week, 30,000 per month, etc. There, that might not be exactly how your budgeting process actually looks there. So, how does it actually look within a modern budgeting and forecasting type environment? And this is what it looks like within Phocas. We've already spoken about that piece in the middle of our financial statements. So our budgeting sits right next to that. And also it sits right next to our analytics area as well. So it can finding it all into one single view there. It's updated on a regular basis because your financial statements links directly into your ERP system. We're getting that information on a regular basis. They're straight into that new budget. If you want to reforecast, it's simple and easy. You want to change a scenario slightly, you can get that brand new data into that budgeting tool there. It's very collaborative there, meaning that every single user that needs access to that budget can have input into that budget. You send off your sales data to your sales manager to input. You send off some IT budget information directly to the person that needs to actually input that data. There's no assumptions made at the top level. You can really have that collaboration right down at the end user level there. It then provides, it's a web-based tool, so anyone can access it anywhere, anytime, and then it becomes a single source. There's not 5 different versions of the budget floating around. Which one's the right one? Which one's the incorrect one to look at there? We also have the ability within this tool to have integrated drivers. And so what we mean by that is you might have some other data in Phocas outside of finance around sales information or purchasing information there. You want to bring that in and use that to drive a part of your budget. We can incorporate that within the tool there. You might want to have headcount information. So how many employees you've got, what's their value, what benefit schemes are they under there, those types of things. we can then start to incorporate that into the budget and then use those employee numbers to drive some budget numbers as well. So employee costs per person for stationery, things like that. IT infrastructure costs per person can be all incorporated in there. And the beauty of this also is that it's continuous, meaning that every single time something gets built in Phocas, it gets updated with the new data coming in from your ERP system. So if something changes, you can be agile and you can make those changes directly against that budget, reforecast that budget, so you can actually see where you're going to end up at the end of the year there. So how does that actually look? So the key thing for us here is that we've got our analytics platform, we've also got our financial statements, and we've got our budgeting and forecasting. So those three pieces really form together that kind of company-wide financial planning and analysis, all in one single platform there. So that's what we're going to run through today, is how that actually looks in a Phocas world. So let's go in and we'll jump into a demo and we'll see what that looks like there. So we'll start with our financial data and we'll see how that looks, and then you'll see how our budgeting and forecasting plugs into that very, very easily. So the first thing that I can see here is my profit and loss. It's a super simple profit and loss. Maybe I want to see a balance sheet. All I need to do is click on my mode button in the top right-hand corner and I select my balance sheet, and it's going to show me my balance sheet within the product there. You'll notice I've put kind of some current ratios at the top there, a working capital figure. All those different ratios and things like that can be built into these different financial statements as you need. If I want a cash flow, I can click on a cash flow and you'll see here's a really simple cash flow. I might jump back to my profit and loss here today. I want to change this. I want to update it. I want to remove a column, add a column. I want to change a date range. It's a click of a button. I go to my columns option at the top here. I want to add in I want to remove maybe my previous. I don't care about that in this case, so I'll just deselect that and then I've removed my previous. I've just got current, I've got budget, and I've got my budget variance there. Maybe I've got different branches, countries, companies, etc., different cost centers within the organization that I want to filter this data by though. So all I need to do is look on this left-hand side. We call these our dimensions within Phocas. And I just say, well, what I'm really interested in is actually my branch. So I might click on my branch and I want to have a look at my head office. How's that performing? Or I want to look at branch number 6. How are we performing there? So I can highlight that branch, jump back to my financial statement, and you'll now see we've filtered that financial statement based specifically on that branch there. Maybe I'm the branch manager and I'm looking at this and I'm saying, oh, we've got really low operating expenses. We're only $158,000 in operating expenses. What's happening there? I can open that up and I can see that this branch really just does a whole bunch of marketing. Maybe it's the marketing office within a business there. But we can actually then see, here's our detail, here's our current, here's our budget, here's our variance there. If I want to know more information about something, maybe around this marketing sponsorship number, it's really quick for me just to right click and select transactions. This will then give me, as the end user, access to all that data that I actually need within my system to ask that question or answer that question, sorry. What's happening with my sponsorship? Why is it $13,000 under budget? What transactions are going into making that up? So I can select that and you'll now see, here we go. There's every single journal transaction that's gone through for the date range that we've selected for that specific branch only, branch number 6, for the, what's that, year 2020 in this case that we've looked at. So you can now see how we spoke about earlier about how Phocas sits around the ERP system, and then people just start asking questions to get those answered. Previously, the user might not be able to get down to this level because it's too hard. They need to go back to the CFO to get that information. Within Phocas, you just click a button, drill down on what's interesting to you from there. Let's reset that. And we'll jump back to our financial statement there. Let's just go in. I'm just going to add my name back in there as well. So what else can we do with these? Maybe I want to build a nested profit and loss. It takes 2 seconds. I click on my country in this case, and I'm just going to drag that up there to my levels. Let that go. It's now rebuilt my profit and loss based on country. I open up my operating expenses. There's the USA, US, UK, and Australia. I open up Australia. There's all my different accounts for within Australia there. So it's so easy for us to tweak and modify and build those different financial statements depending on what it is that you actually need within the business there. Now, speaking of what you actually need within the business, a CFO, a CEO, the board needs a version of a report in one way. Your branch manager wants it in a slightly different way. The question is, how do you do that? In the past, you're going to have to go and build 4 or 5 different profit and losses. They might have to be updated and tweaked every single time you're going into building those different profit and losses. Within Phocas, you've got the ability to have multiple profit and losses, multiple balance sheets, multiple financial statements, depending on the need of a user there. So what this allows me to do is, if you notice I click on that mode button again, I've actually got a branch profit and loss now. So I can go in and select my branch profit and loss. And you'll actually see what we've done here. Operating expenses, employee expenses, marketing expenses, and travel and transport have now been expanded out. Before, it was just one line of operating expenses there. So Phocas allows you within the actual tool to build this structure how you actually need it for your business. So for instance, if I open my travel and transport, again, we can still see it's broken down by my different countries. I can open up the UK and there's everything related to the UK. Maybe I want to say, look, I've got some office expenses that I want to pull out of my operating expenses group and have their own little section there for office expenses. So how do I do that? And it's a really simple process. I just click on the star at the top there, and then I select my statements option. You can see here's my branch profit and loss report. So I can click on that and you'll see here's the layout. So here's my revenue at the top. There's my cost of sale. There's my gross profit calculation, which is A minus B. If you scroll down a little bit, you'll see here that I've got my expenses area, and I've actually built a placeholder here for today already. I've got my office expenses. So what I want to do is I want to go in and I want to assign certain accounts to that office expense group. So when I build my profit and loss, it's going to reattribute it out to that group. If I go to my accounts tab here, this is where I actually do that. So I might just go up to the top here. I'm just going to type in office, and here are my 3 accounts: internet costs for the office, office expenses, and office consumables. They're the ones that I want to reassign. So there's my operating expenses group that they're in at the moment. You can see on the right-hand side there. If I click on that drop down, I can just go and assign them to office expenses. Again, research, go back in, find some other expenses that you want to put in there, different accounts that you want to reclassify. You can do that directly from within Phocas. And it's a really nice way to actually build those profit and losses, because they're not actually reliant now on exactly how you've set up your chart of accounts within your ERP system there. This rings true a lot for some companies that I see that have multiple different entities within them, where they've grown by acquisition and the chart of accounts don't quite match between it. So you can't just do a simple join of the two together. So you can go within Phocas and manually bring in and say, look, this account goes there, that account goes there, is what we're looking at here. So simply with that, I can save it. I can then close that down, and it's going to ask me to rebuild my database because it needs to recalculate those different examples there. So in this case, I'll go yes. That's just going to do it in the background. Once that's built, that new data and that new structure will be brought into brought into this data set. Okay, so you can see how easy it is for us to kind of slice and dice and drill down. If you're a CFO, you can see how easy it is for you now to customize this statement. But what about if I'm a branch manager? I don't really want to get into this much detail around a profit and loss or something like that. Maybe I'm the marketing manager, or I'm in the finance team and the marketing manager said, can you build me a marketing dashboard? I want to see my expenses. I want to see this, I want to see that. So what we do is we think about that visualization piece. We think about financial data for non-financial people. So I'll reset this. And what I'll actually do is I'll jump in and I'll look at my branch profit and loss to begin with, and I'll select from this left-hand side my branch profit and loss. I'll go in and I'll say, hey, look, I want to look at my marketing expenses, and I'll go back up to my account. And you can see here I've got sponsorship, advertising, events, etc., etc. How are we going against budget? How are we going against last year? Might be the question that we want to ask here. I want it in a chart. I want a red, yellow, green segment to say, am I good? Am I bad? There. So what we do is we go over to the left-hand side here. I select my mode and I'll select stream. And what you'll now see is there's my actual, there's my budget, and that's whether I'm above or below my budget there. So in this case, I'm quite over with my marketing in terms of advertising, but I'm under for the rest of them there. So it's not looking too bad. We're about flat. But what I want to do is let's turn this into a chart. So I'll click on this chart icon at the top, and you'll now see here it is in a chart. So super simple for us to get that information in there. I might say, look, that chart looks all right. Maybe really what I want is it a bit more kind of color coding. So let's go in and we'll select that KPI section and we'll select this budget. I'll see this bullet chart segment here. So I want to do some color coding now. So this is an expense. So if it's anything over 100 to 200 is going to be red. Anything between 90 and 100, we might say is going to be yellow, and anything from 0 to 90 will be green there. So as you can see, one account at the top here, advertising's well over, but the rest of them are kind of well within their ranges there. So we're happy with that. But this is obviously a key performance indicator for marketing or for the business as a whole. So what I want to do is I want to click on that star and I want to go add to dashboard. And this will allow me to add this dashboard can have this widget. It can have any widget on it that you like there. So I click on that and it asks me to add it. As you'd expect, I've got a finance dashboard pre-built here for today. So I'll show you this one of what it looks like and what are the types of things that people are actually interested in here. So here's a really simple dashboard. I've got revenue. This is financial year to date. I've done $19 million. My profit or my gross profit in this case is 2.8 million. Here's my margin. And you can see here, I've got some little variances. It's down 23% from the previous. It's down 15% from budget there. I'm losing money in the financial year. I've lost $600,000 so far. My profit, net profit for the financial year is down 3% there. My gross profit, how that's tracking, my net profit, how that's tracking there. So it's bringing all this information together into one visualization. Here's my marketing spend, the little report that we just looked at before. I've added that to this dashboard. I've got my revenue as a gauge, and here I've got my travel expenses there. And as you'd expect at the moment, they're down 13%, which is a bit high. I'd probably expect them to be down further at this point in time, maybe. So with this though, what am I? I'm an administrator, I'm the CEO. Maybe I'm deciding, well, I want to see how a branch is performing. So what I do is I jump down to the bottom here and I pick out a branch. Let's take branch number 6 again. Then I click this focus icon in the top left-hand corner. Have a look at every single widget. They all update now. So now I can actually see that, okay, net profit, we've made $820,000 there. We've made gross profit $896. My margin's about 14% gross there. And here's how my kind of shape of that graph is going for gross and net profit per month there in this case. So we're taking all that information that we had in that financial statements tool and it's just saying, there it is for everyone. So you can go in and you can look at it for the key metrics that matter to you. This is a generic finance kind of dashboard. You could have a slightly different version for a branch. You could have a slightly different version for IT, a slightly different version for different departments and cost centers that need that information given to them on a timely basis in that case. So what if you've got a question around this though? What if I say, well, actually what I want to see is I've got my travel expenses down here. I've got my marketing expenses over here. I want to drill down into it to find out more about it there. So you'll notice every single widget has that little analyze arrow in the top right-hand corner of it. So what this allows you to then do is it allows you to go in and say, okay, well, I'm going to analyze my net profit. So I click on that little arrow for my analyze. What it does is it takes me from my dashboard directly into that database that we were just looking at a minute ago. Here's my categories of revenue, operating expenses, and cost of sales. I might go in and say, hey, show me my operating expenses and show me all the different operating expenses that we've put through that branch number 6 there in this case. Marketing, telephone, fuel costs, etc., is what's going through that specific grouping there. So we've got our analytics. We've got the ability for the CFO to really tailor what the users see, but then the users have the ability to look at that visualization piece and then drill down into answering those questions themselves. So it removes some of that backwards and forwards between the different departments to say, hey, what's going on here? What's going on there? Everything is there for any user to access. So that's our financial statements area there. The question then becomes, well, we've got this really nice financials tool. We've got, if I reset that and look back at my homepage, I've got a really nice layout of a profit and loss there. We normally budget by country is how we budget, or we budget by branch there. How do I actually start to use this tool here to then bring in my budget information for us? So that's where we come in to the budgeting and forecasting tool within Phocas. So I've got a budget partially built here today, but we'll run through the process of actually kind of entering that budget in and how easy it is to manage the workflow within that budget. And for me, one of the major things that I like about our budgeting tool is that workflow. If any of you have dealt with multiple different departmental budgets, for us in Phocas as a prime example, we've got 3 trading companies, a development arm, etc. Imagine how many different heads of department are involved in a budget there. UK, US, Australia, New Zealand are our offices. How do we actually manage that and that workflow? So we use our budgeting tool to do that. So here's our budget. I built this budget based on the format of one of our profit and losses that we saw before. So you can see there, I've got my revenue, my cost of sales information, I've got my gross profit, I've got what my margin is looking like there based on my budget. I've got my operating expenses. If I open up my operating expenses, you can see, are they UK or are they US operating expenses there? If I open up the US, I'm going to see all my different accounts that I can put my budgets in for there. You'll also see down the bottom, we spoke about drivers a little bit earlier in the piece there. I've got some different inputs into my budget, just like a separate tab on an Excel spreadsheet, that are going to drive this main budget page at the front here. So for instance, I've got a headcount driver, I've got a sales driver, and then I've also got what we call a miscellaneous driver down the bottom, which we'll look at how we can use each of those to actually build your budget really quickly and easily. So let's go in and build a budget. So the first thing is, maybe I'm looking at the US, I can see the data here, and I'm going to say, I've got accountancy. Okay, I'm going to look at that. I'm going to say, look, it's $15,000 last year. I think it's going to be slightly more this year. I think we're going to spend $20,000 on my accountancy. All right, so there it is. is it spread evenly or is it based on the actuals of last year? So this is where we can think about right back at the start. Are we just going to use a standard run rate? Hey, we spent $15,000 last year. Let's just distribute that bang evenly across the budget. That's something that happens in the past within your organizations when you're building those budgets. Or I could actually say, look, let's use the actuals of the previous year to split out that 20 grand across the year. That's probably a little bit better in order to really manage our cash flow and our profit, et cetera, over a time frame there. So I'm going to base it on actuals and I'm just going to click apply. And there it is. That 20,000 is attributed equally across each of those, well, not equally, attributed to each of the months where the actual money came through from last year. Then when I'm happy with that, all I need to do is click on that little complete button and it's done and I've completed that line of the budget. So super simple. Now let's look at this though. How many accounts are there in the USA under operating expenses? There's hundreds. So what I might do is I might say, look, I don't want to deal with all this. All these ones here, I don't look after those departments or those accounts or whatever it is. So what I do is I go up and I say, all right, well, I'm going to go and assign these 11 accounts. I'm going to go assign them to someone else. So I'll just go in and click on that. And I'm going to assign them over here to Billy. Billy budgets, he needs to go and enter in that budget information there. So I select that and you'll see there is all those accounts assigned out to Billy now. So what happens is Billy logs in and I'm actually logged in as Billy over here. He opens up his budget. This will give me this will load that budget for that user. And then it's going to give Billy the ability to enter in his specific budget and then send it back to me for review. Do I accept it? Do I decline it? Etc. there. So if I open up my operating expenses for the US, you'll now see that these are all assigned to me. I can't change this line here because it's not assigned to Billy. But I can go in here and say, all right, well, today, yeah, we think we're going to be 400,000 for our bad debts. Yeah, let's base it on actuals again, as of like last year, and I'll apply that. Or 4 million in that case. Maybe that's a bit high. Maybe we need to go, and I might change that, and I'll say 40,000, and we'll apply that. There we go. So 40,000. Then what Billy does is he's happy with that. So then he goes and he clicks assign, and then he submits it back to me. So you can see now how that workflow is going to be so much easier for an end user to actually look at that data and say, okay, well, what have I got to do? I enter in the budget that's relevant to me, and then I submit it back to the budget creator or the next person in line there. So you'll see now, if I was to go in and I was to refresh this budget, it will then reload that bad debts. It will then be accepted of that data back from Billy, and then I can have a look at exactly that. So let's go in and refresh that just quickly, and we'll see exactly what that looks like now. So now if I open up my operating expenses, open up the US, you'll see it's been submitted. It's submitted back to me. And then I say, okay, do I want to accept or reject it? Do I want to put some notes in there? I can say all good, and then I can accept it. And we're good to go. That's now accepted. And then I can complete that budget and we're done. Now, what about audit trails? Who changed what cell? All I need to do is right click in that cell, and you'll see that we can have a look at exactly the history that's gone through that cell. So if I select cell history, you'll now see initially it was populated with 23,000, then Billy accidentally put in 4 million and it went to 230, and then he fixed it up and it went back to 3,000 there. So there's full audit history on everything within the actual tool there. Again, workflow history. So we can see when it started, who it was assigned to, what happened to it all along the way there. So it's really easy to start to work out what's happened to actually build that budget in that case. So you can see how simple it is to enter in our budget. If we're just going to do a basic budget, we could just go through and fill out all those numbers and we'd be good to go. But in reality, that's not what happens in business. What we actually want to do is, I might say, well, look, for my revenue within Australia, I don't budget simply by one single sales account. I actually budget by region. So this is where our driver tabs come in. So if I jump down the bottom here to my sales driver, what I'm actually looking at here is all my different regions within Australia. I then go through here and say, okay, look, I think we're going to grow quite considerably in the ACT this year. So I might just say we're going to do 100,000 for the year. Let's split it evenly. That's fine. And apply that. Oh, not 100, not 10. We want 100. There we go. 100,000. New South Wales, what I think we're going to do here is that we want to go in and I just want to grow that. I don't want to grow that by 10%. And I'm going to click apply to that. And it's now grown that by 10% across the board there. So again, I can go through this process and budget how I need it to be budgeted as a sales manager, for instance there. So I'm the sales manager that's inputting this budget. Once I actually do this and go through that process, all this data here, so our $27 million that we're budgeted for here, that automatically gets pushed back to my main budget tab. So it's really simple for us to use those different budgeting levels, but then roll it up. So everyone is looking at that one version of the truth. I've seen it too many times where finance say the budget's $1 million, but the sales team, their budget never adds up to exactly $1 million. It's 950 or it's 1.05, for instance there. So this way, everyone's across the right data set and everyone's looking at the right data and everyone's pushing it all the way through to the top level from the bottom up, essentially here. So you can see we can use that sales piece to do that, to drive that data there. What about some other assumptions though? Let's take office expenses as an example here. I've got internet costs, I've got office expenses, I've got office consumables listed here. Now, maybe what I want to do is some sort of calculation around this based on the number of people I've got in the office, because our internet costs change, our office expenses change, our office consumables change depending on how many people we've got. So what I've actually got here is under my miscellaneous driver, I've actually got a couple of things in here for the moment. I've got how many laptops we think we're going to purchase per month for our IT team, but then I've got an office space staff level here. So at the moment, from July 2021 through to September 2021, there's only 10 people in the office. October, we're going to ramp it to 15, 20, and then by the start of next year, we're back to 30 people, which might be our full amount of staff that are going to be based in that office. So how do I use this to then drive that cost on our main page? Simple. All of you are probably experts in Excel. It's the exact same process. I just go equals to there. I then jump down to my driver tab and I say, hey, I want to use that cell there to drive my budget. So I'm going to say, look, every single time someone's in the office, I believe that is a cost, equals to every time there's someone in the office, I believe that there's a cost of $100 per month per person in the office. So I can do that. So I'm timesing my number of staff by 100, and you'll now see, well, in July, it's going to cost us $100. Then I can just right-click, copy that forward, and my entire budget has now been updated using that specific driver there. Obviously, we've got other drivers in there. I've got laptop purchases. Maybe you've got car servicing. You've got other bits and pieces that you need to manage, that you want to quickly change something and say, look, well, actually, we think we're going to go 15 people in the office in September. I go back to my main page, our widget or our budget has now updated based on that information from there. So it's really, really simple to use those different drivers to then really reflect how your budget is actually going to be, with those assumptions being built in throughout the whole process there. Now, the last driver that we'll look at here is our headcount driver. If I go to my headcount, here's every single employee that I've got. I've even got a new starter in here for February of 2022. Again, we've got that same workflow functionality, so I can go and assign this out to another user to actually complete the salaries for a specific employee. Now, I'm sure a lot of you are thinking here, hang on, there's a lot of issues around salaries and things like that getting out to the wrong people. Here is actually a specific set of security around that headcount driver. You need to have been given access to this specific page with a specific password to this page there. So there's very deep security built into this page within Phocas. Then you can see that every single employee, you can assign their salaries to different accounts, their bonuses to different accounts, their commissions to different accounts there, what their start date is, what their salary is, what their bonuses are. Scroll across, we can then have a look at if there's any adjustments that are going to happen throughout the year there. And then over here on the right-hand side as well, what we actually have is a benefit plan. So I've got different benefits. In Australia, it's going to be superannuation. Maybe if someone's been there for more than 5 years, you give them a healthcare benefit as well. So all those benefits are built into the actual product, and then you'll actually see the value of that benefit and then what the total period cost associated with that is. So this then all drives back to our main page within our budget as well there. So if I go back to my main page there and I go to my employee expenses, you'll now see that our salaries are driven, our bonuses are driven, and our employee benefits are all driven from that headcount driver within the actual product there. So you can see how simple it is to import all your headcount in there, and then it's going to drive your budget, really monitor those various different benefits that you might have associated with employees to really give you that detail about what's going on within that budgeting period there, or how you're going to look in 6 months' time, 12 months' time. So we're almost at the end there. Let's pretend that we've finished our budget. We're all happy with this. What do I do now? Easy. I go down the bottom and I click publish. That's going to take all this budget data that we just looked at, and it's going to throw it back into that financial statements tool that we just saw. So it's all within that one tool. I don't need to export this out somewhere else, re-import it into another product. It's all within the one view. So I would publish that. I then simply jump back to my financial statements, and then under my budget stream here, I'd have another tick box for my 2022 budget, and I just tick that, and that would be included on my financial statement for that year. So we've covered a lot today, guys. I can see a couple of questions have come through there. So Andrew, is there any questions that stand out there?
Yeah, David, got a couple of questions in, which is great. I'll ask those. So I've got one from Simon in terms of the source of the budget data. Mm-hmm. You know, obviously our customers here are NetSuite customers. So if the budget data is in NetSuite, are they able to bring that across? And what's the refresh rate of that?
Yeah, so with the budget data, if you've already got a budget built somewhere else, we can import that directly into the financials tool for you. So at the moment, a lot of people are using Excel. So if you've got that, we can just import that directly into the Phocas tool, or if it's in NetSuite or if it's in another tool, we can bring that directly into the financial statements product for you. Then next year, you'll say, well, look, it was a nightmare to do it in that system in Excel. Let's bring that into the budgeting and forecasting tool, and we'll mirror that. And then the process from that point forward is much, much easier for you there.
Yeah, great. Got a question from Hamish right at the top. We were talking about security, which is obviously really important. Mm-hmm. as a comment, I must admit I was part of a company that someone accidentally sent the leave liability report to every manager in the business, which you can work out everyone's salary from that. So not the greatest moves. So I guess pulling information is a lot better than pushing information at times. But a question from Hamish. Is that user and role security, does that reflect what's already set up in NetSuite, or is it a separate set of security?
It's a separate set of security that you build within the actual Phocas product there. So your different users, you can actually go right down to the level of this user can only see this branch, or this user can only see this account within Phocas there. So you set that up at a user level within Phocas. Obviously, the user management tools around that, hey, I want to change these 5 users and managers for that branch. They can get the commonality, so you don't need to set it up 5 times. You just do a mass update of all those 5 users at once there. That's fine. Yeah.
Yeah, great. Another question in from Nathan is there a balance sheet budget option?
There will be right now. We're working on that. So the budgeting and forecasting tool is something that is fairly new to Phocas. It's officially been in the market for a few months now. And that's something that is coming. I think the key word there is, I think it's three-way budgeting or 3-way forecasting. That's something that we're working on, and that'll be released in the not too distant future there. Exact timeframes, obviously, I don't have right on hand, but that's something that we're definitely working towards.
Yeah, great. Next question in is from Ashley. If you create a budget in Phocas, can you push it back into NetSuite?
At the moment, it will all just sit within Phocas. But again, have a think about how that actually might happen in the future, and there's probably going to be some work around how that looks in the future. Is it a standalone budgeting tool? At the moment, you've got financial statements as a prerequisite for budgeting. That might change in the future, where you can just have budgeting and it's read and write backwards and forwards between whatever ERP system you're using there.
Yeah. And potentially it's just a 2-step process of exporting the budget to Excel and sucking that up into NetSuite, right?
Yeah, in the meantime. For now, that's what you probably do. Yep.
Okay. Another one from Ashley. Will you offer in the future a cash flow forecasting option?
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, sweet. I had another one. So obviously when you're doing reporting and for the board or for investors, they may not actually have access to the Phocas tool. Can you export that information like into a PDF for them to consume?
Yeah, so we can export it PDF, Excel, all that type of stuff. There's a little bit of kind of manipulation and around the headings, what logos you put at the top and things like that will be in there as well. How that actually lays out on a page, and we're working quite hard on making a kind of board pack type export as well. Like click a button, there's 10 reports. So that's on the roadmap for us in the future as well. There.
Brilliant. Well, that's our questions from everyone, David. I might. We're right almost on the hour, so I might wrap up if that's okay, and I'll just take back over. Okay, so thanks very much, David, for going through that. Looks like a great solution. Big fan of web-based solutions, as you can imagine, being a solution provider for NetSuite, but looks great. So look, everyone, we've got the user event next week, as I mentioned in the opening. So really look forward to seeing you there next Wednesday. I'll be emceeing that virtually, which will be interesting. We're doing an inventory webinar next month for October as well. So I hope you can get along to that. And just to wrap up, we will be placing this recording on our YouTube page and on our resources page on our website. So feel free to subscribe to those to get alerted to any new content. We'll be sharing your details with Scott at Phocas Software. So if you've got any follow-up questions, he can get in touch with you and make sure that he can answer any of those. So again, thanks very much, David. Really appreciate you presenting today. And I will wrap up from here.
Cool. Thanks a lot. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
We hope this video gave you the information you were after. If you have any further questions, get in touch with us using the links in the description. At Liberate IT, we can provide free consulting to understand your business system requirements, understand your company growth plans, and provide free NetSuite demonstrations. For more information, visit our website.